Before this video starts, if you enjoyed this video, there are many more like it on the channel already, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. Also, drop a like on this video as it helps it perform in the YouTube's algorithm better. I also appreciate that. And one more also, the last video I uploaded did not do all that well because I don't think I figured out a good title because it was weird to word it without some of the players in the title. It was about the Paul George trade for Victor Oladipo, so if that interests you, it is in the card above. Today we are talking about the player that I believe is the most underrated in the NBA and often the most disrespected player in the NBA, and that player is Karl Anthony Towns. There are a handful of players in today's game who get disrespected pretty routinely. It's just a part of the game when it's intertwined with the age of social media. There are NBA fans that say shit like Giannis has no skill. There are those that say Harden only averages a lot of points because he's on a team that lets him shoot that much. Those who think that Curry isn't a top 5 player because he didn't win an award that he was robbed of twice. There are still holdouts on LeBron being one of the, at minimum, top 5 best players of all time for some reason. I could really go on, and from a scale perspective, yeah, there are players who are disrespected more, I'd say, more frequently and even sometimes more severely, but in terms of just the overall consensus around a player, along with common held beliefs about that player, I feel no one player in the NBA is more universally disrespected than Karl Anthony Towns. Cat is a top 15 player in the NBA at the bare minimum, a top 8 offensive player at the bare minimum, and overall just a fucking beast of a player. None of that should even be up for debate, and yet somehow it is. So let's look at why Cat is so special and why idiots think that he isn't.
Save! Absolutely incredibly with the acrobatic alley-oop!
Now, let me explain why I feel Cat is such an amazing talent. In terms of just putting the ball in the basket, let me be clear, this is no hyperbole. Karl Anthony Towns has the potential to be the greatest scoring center of all time. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certainly scorers throughout NBA history that are currently known as better scorers than Towns, and I expect them to even continue to be that way. But versatility-wise, Cat has every one of them beat. Now, it might not seem like versatility really matters all that much in terms of ranking offensive players, but when you really look at it, it does. Karl Malone had a pretty simple offensive game. He would back you down in the post, finish off of a pick and roll, or hit a mid-range shot, whether that was a fadeaway or a catch and shoot. When you break down his game in a very broad sense, that's basically all that he did to score 30,000 points in the NBA. Currently sitting at second place all time, although eventually he's going to get passed by LeBron James. However, in terms of ranking offensive players, how often do you hear the name Karl Malone mentioned as one of the greatest scorers ever? The reason for that is because he wasn't all that versatile putting the ball in the basket. You get a lot of credit as an offensive player for your versatility. Kevin Durant as an example. Statistically speaking here, there is almost no distinction between the points per game and field goal percentage between these two players. Prime Durant averages 28 points on 50% shooting. Prime Malone averages 27.3 points on 53% shooting. However, I think we can all agree that Kevin Durant is a better scorer than Karl Malone was by quite a pretty substantial margin. I say all of this because Karl Anthony Towns is already the most versatile scoring center ever. Cat is a knockdown three-point shooter. This year, Cat shot just short of 8 threes a game, which is the highest amount of three-point attempts a game for a center in NBA history, with a 1.6 attempt lead on Brook Lopez from last season. He is literally the only center to shoot over 7 threes a game ever. Coincidentally, he is also leading all power forward throughout NBA history in that area, with Kristaps Porzingis this year being in second place with just 7.1 attempts. And these attempts are completely justified because he shot 41% from 3 this year. Now, it is important to point out the context of the fact that this only came from a reasonably small sample size, as Cat has only played 35 games this year, but he's shown the potential to be this good of a shooter in the past with a career 39% three-point percentage, with him averaging 4.5 attempts on 40% the season prior. So already, Cat is on the trajectory to be the greatest shooting big man ever. And yes, you heard that right. Dirk Nowitzki's best outside shooting season was when he put up 4.6 threes a game on 40% in 2002. However, I'm not going to give that title to Towns yet. Dirk does have a 2-decade-long career of being a knockdown shooter. However, give me like 2, maybe not even 2 more seasons of Towns shooting at this rate with that many attempts at that percentage, and I'm giving him that title. But what's really important here is I am just starting to explain Cat's game. That's not even most of it. It's just probably the most interesting thing about him that makes him so special. Cat is also a great ball handler and playmaker for a center. He routinely takes his matchup off of the dribble, and he averages 4.5 assists a game. Because of how dominant Cat is offensively, he draws a lot of doubles, and he doesn't have the issue someone like Joel Embiid has, where he struggles to make the proper pass with the pressure on him. Towns is also a good finisher. For his career, he shoots 70% of the basket, and he gets there pretty frequently because of how dominant of a post player he is. He can use his size to bully down low, or just use his finesse and touch to shoot over guys, or just get around them. And yes, I'm saying that fully aware that this photo exists. He's also a damn good rebounder. So offensively, there are no holes in Towns' game whatsoever. Where the criticism of him comes is on the other end of the court, where Towns is known as a pretty damn bad defensive player, which earlier in his career was definitely true, but after the first 2 seasons of his career, he has been a positive in defensive box plus minus for the rest of his career. And if you're not a big fan of those statistics, Wolves fans can attest, and I can tell you from watching him play, that he has gotten much better on that end of the court. Mostly probably because of the rampant criticism that he got about it earlier in his career. He by no means is a good defender, but he's also not a bad one. I would say he's about on the same level of defensive talent as Nikola Jokic. And yet people often rank Jokic over Joel Embiid, who's a phenomenal defensive player in spite of the fact that he is a mediocre one. Something that I agree with, by the way. I just don't understand why that same standard is not applied to Cat. Now let's address the idea that you cannot win with Karl Anthony Towns. Outside of the 1 year with Jimmy Butler, the Timberwolves have not made the playoffs with him as their franchise cornerpiece. My answer to that is, what fucking team was Cat on that had even a slim chance of making the playoffs outside of that team with Jimmy Butler? Being able to carry a roster as absolutely dog shit as some of the teams that Cat has played on is something players that only in the top 0.5% of players are capable of doing. Basically, LeBron does that. I'm not getting mad at Towns for not being able to pull that one off. I will never understand why players who are so clearly in a horrible situation are always held to that standard. That same shit is used against Devin Booker and Zach LaVine. Again, what teams have those guys been on that they wouldn't have to be in the top 1% of NBA players in order to get them to the NBA playoffs? And what's even more annoying than that is that this is often thrown out without the context of, yes, the teams that they're playing on, but also the context of the numbers. When Cat was in the game this year, the Wolves had a 115.7 offensive rating, which is the 7th best offense in the league. That is, by the way, with his next best player being either a washed up Jeff Teague or Andrew Wiggins. When Cat sits, the Wolves have a 103.7 offensive rating, which is 29th in the NBA, just ahead of the Charlotte Hornets. When you have a team full of players who are worse than the New York Knicks on offense, you should not have the expectation to drag them to the playoffs. Not even close. And if you don't like me using these on-off numbers from this season because Cat only played 35 games, well, Towns still had them as a top 10 offense on the court while they were middle of the pack on the lower end of the spectrum in the 2018-19 season when he sat. And if you even have the balls to dare to say that Cat puts up empty numbers, he has a +8 ± this year. Again, on a horrible team, a +6 last year, and a +5 the year before that. If you have a +8 on a team that is this bad, that proves that your stats are not empty, and it also shows just how fucking valuable Towns is. When Cat is in the game, the Wolves are a winning team. When he is out, they are the worst team in the league. I think that matters. And people expect him to make a playoff push with that. Makes sense. Now let's address the notion that Cat is soft. Actually, no, fuck that. Let's not do that. Stop being a goddamn child or a 50-year-old who still wishes the league was the 1990s. Softness does not fucking matter. It's barely even a thing. Are we really going to act like Towns not beating the shit out of Jimmy Butler for calling him out in practice makes him some bitch? Are you going to walk up to him on the street and call him soft? No? Well, shut the hell up. Stop acting like that's a thing that matters. It just doesn't. What matters is that Towns is a beast offensively while not being a negative defensively. Stop with your macho man bullshit. And this year, with the Wolves having 2 players on the roster who aren't complete dog shit in D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley, I expect them to be a good team. They might not make the playoffs, and most certainly won't be a high seed if they do, but they will not be a team that you can just run over because Towns is a phenomenal player. I put Cat as the 12th best player in the league in my top 100 players list, and I am only more confident in that now after this season. I might even move him up a few spots. I can even see a world where Towns is the best player on a championship team one day as long as that team is built around him properly. I have some hesitance saying that simply because he is a center and they are probably the least important position in basketball as a whole, but he's definitely on that level of talent. He has the potential to be one of the greatest offensive players of all time, and it's about time he's gotten that recognition. By the way, this whole video was made because I saw a tweet saying that Ben Simmons was better, and it triggered me. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.